Yeah, but autistic people have a really hard time communicating. I don't. I just have a hard time being understood. It's the same thing. Is it? Yeah, if someone doesn't understand you, it's because you didn't communicate it well. Or is it because they suck at listening? I mean, it could be both. And yes, it could be because I'm not a great communicator. But it could also just be because someone else is not great at, like, comprehension. We're not all Einsteins out here, you know what I mean? It just seems kind of convenient to assume that the reason someone else doesn't understand you is their fault. Not any more than assuming the reason that you don't understand them is their fault. So whose fault is it? It doesn't have to be anyone's fault. What is with this obsession? But it also could be both. I'm just saying that communication relies at least a little bit on the ability of the listener too. So all people that don't understand you are just stupid. Didn't say anything about being stupid. But they're not all brilliant either. So what are you saying? I'm saying that the way society often describes things is very different than the way they feel when you experience them. Which is why someone can find a symptom unrelatable, even though it applies to them more than they could ever know. Because symptoms are often described as if they're from the first person perspective of the experiencer, even though they're often from the perspective of the observer. Like what? Like how we struggle to communicate. You don't think that you have a hard time with that? I've come to realize that I do, but not because I find it difficult to find words and form thoughts, but because I have so many that most people either can't or won't keep up or stick around while I'm explaining myself. But what about all those times when you're about to have a meltdown and you literally can't find words? Well, by that time, it's actually probably because I've explained myself a million times, and that's actually why I can't find the words in that moment, because I'm so emotionally overwhelmed with big feelings. Which is not really fair, because let's be honest, even non-autistic people kind of suck at communicating when they're at their wits' end, in the middle of big feelings, you know? I don't ever have trouble finding the right word. No, we just have trouble controlling the wrong ones. What? Nothing, I'm just saying that there's a big difference between struggling to communicate and struggling to be understood. And as an overthinker, that's one of the main reasons I refuse to believe that I was autistic. The biggest way being autistic has affected my life is being hyperverbal and hyperlexic. Spent my whole life over-communicating and over-explaining, which ironically is just as ineffective at not communicating at all. So what do you think would have been a more relatable or accurate description of the symptom? Often has trouble being understood. But not everyone's hyperverbal, and some autistic people are even nonverbal. Are you just like forgetting about them? Just because a person is nonverbal doesn't automatically mean they suck at communicating. Even with or without a device, there's plenty of ways that we communicate without using words, without speaking. Just because family members don't always pick up on it doesn't mean that the autistic person isn't being intentional or expressing themselves exactly the way they mean to. You clearly haven't been around any nonverbal, non-speaking, high support needs autistic people, because if you were, you'd be aware of what an exhausting and devastating daily struggle it is to figure out what these people need. Just because sometimes things sound like unintelligible gibberish to us doesn't mean it's not a language to them. I'm not saying it's not a struggle. Every autistic experience is different. Most of these instances that you're bringing up are examples of people who self-diagnosis doesn't even really apply to. But we now know that people who society never even dreamed of being autistic actually are and have been, because they're so high masking. So for people on that particular journey of self-discovery, the phrasing becomes more and more important, because the qualifier then is about how something feels, not how something seems from outside of the experience. Hello?